Hey there, fellow comic fans. As always, I'm Scott Harris King. I'm here on the Couch of Solitude, and I'm ready to answer your questions today. We've got the Ask Me Anything 900 subscriber video. So when I was getting ready to hit 900 subscribers, I asked you to ask me your questions. Send me your questions, and you did it. And so today we're just gonna go through all your questions and finally going to give you the answers that you've been dying to hear. So let's just jump right into it. Actually, before I jump right into it, again, I want to say thank you all for the subscribers. We've now hit 900. As I'm recording this, we're at 927 subscribers. Soon we'll have another video where we're on the road to 1,000. I'm going to wait a little while before we do that. But thank you all for your support. I really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy these questions and these answers to your questions. The answers are coming right off the top of my head. So here we go. Question number one. I'm going to go in the order that they were asked. This is from Basic NA Player. Thanks so much for your support. Thank you for the question and the watching my videos. And the question is, who is your favorite Marvel character? It's a good question. I'm a big Avengers guy. So my favorite Avengers are Captain America, Hawkeye, and Vision. And so, I'd have to say, I guess, Captain America. But I'm a really big fan of the Vision, particularly, 60s, 70s, and early 80s Vision. The classic Vision is just awesome. More recent characters, I am a big fan of Squirrel Girl, but I'd have to say Captain America is probably still my favorite. So thank you for the question. Pillow for Case Studies asks, who are your favorite writers in the comic book field? Very good question, and actually really hard for me to answer. I'm part of various comic book groups and forums and discords and stuff like that, and there's someone on one of them who's consistently arguing that that Jonathan Hickman is the greatest comic book creator of all time, and I don't think I've ever even read anything that he's ever written, because I kind of stopped reading mainstream superhero stuff around 2008. So all the newer people, most of them I don't know. So my frame of reference is still the older stuff, that I really like, all the classic stuff. So, in terms of classic writers, I am a big fan of Mike Grell. He does have certain writing tics that, when you binge read a lot of them, you'll get to see. But I really like Grell's writing. Kurt Busiek is right up there. Big fan of Kurt. For Avengers is blessed with a lot of great writers. Roger Stern is excellent, and I love Jim Shooter's runs on Avengers and stuff like that. Stan Lee, of course, always gets a shout. For me, I would say my top two, like classic writer, really old school, Charles Biro, who did a lot of the writing for Lev Gleason, Boy Comics, and Crime Buster in particular is my favorite stuff, but he did a lot of really great writing in the Golden Age. And then probably Kurt Busiek from newer writers. He's just really good. He's really good. So those are probably my favorite, but it really depends on the situation and the title. There's some writers that are just better at other titles. Like, for instance, I love Kurt Busiek's writing, obviously, since I just named him as one of my favorites. But his run on Avengers had some of the best stories, but also overall was just not quite at where I wanted it to be, because the highlights were at the top, but a lot of it was just sort of a little bit lower across the board than I thought it would be. Whereas, I don't think his Avengers run as a whole reached the level of Astro City, stuff like that. But still, again, Kurt Busiek, Charles Biro. So thank you. Hopefully that answers your question. Captain Beyond asks, do you collect any Christian comic books? Well, hopefully you've seen the video that I've done recently where I'm putting together the full run of Spire Christian comics. I'm slowly putting together a set of the Jack Chick books as well, the Crusaders. Now, I'm aware you can order those. I've been made aware from my viewers, like you, that you can order the whole run of those from their website, but I actually prefer to find them in the back issues just because it's more fun that way, but also I don't really want to give them any of my money. So, so the answer is yes. I do collect a lot of the Christian comics. I find them to be really interesting. And I just, again, learned from one of you that the new Barbour, when they took over the comics from Spire, they actually put out a few titles new titles that Barbour didn't put out. So I'll have to start looking for those as well. So, but you'll be seeing, whenever I get them, you'll be seeing the Christian. I did a whole video where I went page by page through one of the Jack Chick books, and then I decided not to air it because I thought it might be a little too much for the channel. So if people really want to see it, I guess I could post it, but I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. But thank you for your question. Silver Knight Kyle asks a very long question. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but it's a joke question. But Kyle, thank you so much for your support. Kyle's been with me here on the channel since early days, and so every time I've done one of these videos, which is a number of times now, he's asked questions. I think he just ran out of questions, which is totally fine. But thanks, Kyle, as always, for watching. I really appreciate it. Shrewscules. No, wait a minute. Shrews Clues. I thought it was like Hercules. No, I misread that. Shrews Clues asks, first of all, thank you for your question and for watching my videos. I appreciate it. Two questions. It's a two-parter. What is the farthest comic book shop from your home you've ever been to, and what did you think of it? So I had to actually Google this. I live near Boston, and one thing that's interesting is that there's parts of Europe that are actually closer to me in Boston than some parts of the West Coast are. So I had to do a little bit of Googling to see the distance. So the actual answer is Budapest. So I went to a comic store in Budapest when I was there with my wife, and right at the beginning of 2019, and it was just cool to find a comic store in Budapest. Okay, I'm interrupting just very briefly, just to explain. I've been having a lot of technical issues with my laptop where I was recording on the Couch of Solitude. That's why actually this video has been delayed. I started working on that like 6 weeks ago, and I just couldn't get the thing to work. So I've decided to finally just switch to standing up here. I want to finish the video now. So, sorry. Bit of a non sequitur right in the middle of the answer, but I just wanted to explain why all of a sudden I'm standing up and my beard's bigger and all that. So, I believe I was talking about the comic store in Budapest. So yeah, it was a very small place. One little room. They have these cool like apartment buildings there that have these like there's like an open square in the middle, and that everything's around. Very European, very cool. And basically you go through that little courtyard, and it was down in the bottom of this one little unit down there. Didn't really have much in the way of back issues. I was really hoping to find some cool old Hungarian comics. I know they did some bootleg stuff during the Cold War when they were behind the Iron Curtain. There were like some knockoff Marvel stuff where people were basically illegally reprinting them, translating them, and stuff like that. They didn't have anything like that. I think that stuff's probably really hard to find. But I did get some newer Marvels that were in Hungarian for whatever reason, and we were there. Again, it was right at the beginning of 2019, right after New Year's Day on 2019, and they were just printing Marvels. So I've got Marvels and Hungarian here somewhere in my collection I got there. So it's just really cool. Been to some really great comic stores around the world. Um, saw an Avengers 1 at a comic store in Rome. Um, cool comic stores in Norway, and England and all over the place. Had some disappointments. When I was in New Zealand, we went to a comic store and they happened to be closed the day that we were there, so that was disappointing. Fly literally across around the far side of the world, a 24-hour flight, and the comic store was closed the day I was there. So, but I've been to a bunch of cool comic stores, gotten some really cool foreign comics, some of these stores. Um, I always try and pick up like a local printed issue as a souvenir when I go overseas. So thank you very much for the question. I really appreciate it. Groove Dude, thanks very much for the support and the subscription. I appreciate it. And the comment: which old school comic would benefit from a revival right now, in your opinion? Well, I mean, my opinion's not in touch with the mainstream. Um, so it's a little hard for me to say. Like, there are comics that I would love for them to have revivals, but I'm not sure that they would necessarily benefit from coming out now. Like, I would love to have a Warlord revival. I think having a new Jughead series would be fantastic. So there's stuff that I personally would want to see, but which like old property would benefit the most from a revival? Okay, this is also a very me answer, but a little outside the box. But I'm gonna say Young Romance, and the reason I'm saying that is because romance comics in manga are huge, and they're not just huge in Japan, but manga does really well here, and there's a big market for manga and for romance comics that the mainstream American publishing companies are not tapping into at all. Like, it's stuff that you cannot get at a comic book store unless you can find some kind of little indie romance book, right? So I think if DC could get like over themselves and really get the marketing out to the audience that wants that sort of thing, that they could really tap into a big audience, and you could do a lot more different types of romance stories now than you were allowed to do back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So I think it's a series that would be better now, but also uh, could benefit now from and benefit the company now. So that's what I would do. But what do I know? Okay, next question comes from Guillaume Barnaby. Thanks so much for the support and the question. I really appreciate it. The question is, what comic book would you like done as a movie? That can include a remake as well, since not all comic book movies have been well made. So, great question. I'm on a big Warlord kick these days, so I would love to see a Warlord movie. I think it could be really cool if it's done well. In general, I think of genre pieces. So I'm a huge fan of Sandman Mystery Theater. I think it could make a really cool comic movie. I think you could do a really good movie of that. I also think you could do an excellent movie of The Unknown Soldier, another favorite of mine. So, yeah, there's some other things I think would make better TV shows. Like, if we're going to stick with the war genre, the Joseph Kowalski series in War is Hell is a favorite of mine. Only ran for like 6 issues, but that was a great story. It was kind of like Quantum Leap, except for he leaps into the body of someone that's just been killed during a war, and then he basically has to like avenge them, basically whatever, or save, whatever they were trying to do, whatever unfinished business they didn't get done. He basically takes over their body and does it, and that releases him to be sent to the next person. So that could make a really cool TV show. But for movies, yeah, I think Sandman Mystery Theater, Warlord, Unknown Soldier, those would be my picks. Next question is Darren Smith. Darren, thanks so much again for the support. I really appreciate it. I really liked your yellow covers video, as I always, as I also like yellow covers the most. I'm curious, do you have a second favorite color cover you also think are cool? I know I do. Well, like most people, I really like a good black cover if it's got real deep blacks. I also have a thing for white covers. White covers are really hard because in some ways they're harder than black covers. Yes, black covers pick up all of the creases and dings and fingerprints, but white covers fade. They yellow, they tan. It's really hard to get find an old comic with a white cover that's still pure white. And I have a few. I have a copy of Avengers 106 that has like a blindingly white cover, and I used to have another one that was just sort of like a grungy white. And when you see the difference, it's a huge difference. So, like, I really like a pure white cover, um, but I also like the black. I would say it's kind of a toss up for me. I might give the edge to white though. Um, those would be my picks. So, thanks very much for the question. Next question is Las Cruces, who asks, first of all, again, thank you so much for all your support. Have you ever found a signature on a book, like on the splash page, that wasn't disclosed as having been being signed? So the answer is yes, I have, and it wasn't anyone particularly interesting. I think Mark Bagley. I've had that happen a couple times, but Mark Bagley is probably the most well known of the artists. It's not like I've opened it up and there's a Steve Ditko or something in there. Um, so it hasn't happened a lot, but it's happened a few times. It's fun when it does happen, but again, I've never really come across anyone particularly exciting to get from that. All right, here's an interesting question. It's from Brad Bazanker. Brad, thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it very much. It's sort of a twist on the question. His question is the reverse of one we've already had. Which property, past or present, would you like to see as a comic book? So something that's not a comic book that's being turned into a comic book. Now that's a really tricky question because usually they're not as good as the book, or they're not as good as the movie. In general, adaptations tend to not be as good as whatever the original medium was. And so taking like a movie or a TV show and turning it into a comic book can be pretty dicey. Um, so I might think more outside the box and say like, and a lot of the obvious ones have already been made into comic books. Something like a game is interesting. Video games or even board games, they've been like adaptations of like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. I just finished playing Gloomhaven, um, and I really enjoyed that. I think that could make for a really interesting comic book. Um, there's a lot of interesting storytelling that takes place in video games and board games that's sort of non-linear, and that makes it a challenge if you're trying to do a story like in a comic book, or like a linear type of storytelling to sort of capture what is magical about playing through something, right? And you also have the challenge when you're adapting a game is that part of the fun is the game allows you to be in it and you make the decisions about what's happening, whereas the writer makes the decisions about what's happening in something like a comic book. But I think it could be really interesting to see adaptations of some of my favorite board games turned into comic books. There's some that are even like comic book um, inspired or influenced. Like there's a card game called Sentinels of the Multiverse, which is basically comic book. Like it's superheroes. It's just the stories are all done um, through playing the cards, and the cards though are some of them are designed to look like comic book covers, and they have references to like quotes and stuff from different issue numbers of comics that never existed. So it'd be really fun to see that like turned into a real comic book. So Not sure that fully answered your question, but hopefully it partially answered it. So thank you for that. Suddenly Comics, thank you for the support. And the question: what was your favorite comic-related movie in 2023? Oh boy. Well, a couple of the big ones I didn't see. I mean, I saw all the MCU movies in 2023, but I didn't see the second. I haven't seen yet the second Spider Verse movie, which I want to see, and it's just we just haven't gotten around to it. It's available on some of our streaming platforms, so I know we could watch it anytime. We just haven't done it, even though I really like the first one. I know that got really good reviews, so I didn't see that many, I'm gonna take a quick look and see which movies came out, and then I can answer that a little bit better. Okay, I've refreshed my memory by quickly looking at a list, and I have to say it was a pretty dire year for superhero movies. At least it's hard to um, think of any comic book movies I saw in the last year that weren't superhero movies, and most of the ones I saw weren't particularly very good. So I've heard really good things about Blue Beetle. Haven't seen it yet. The Flash was really bad. You can watch my review of that, but had some fun parts that were overshadowed by how bad everything else was. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was okay in parts. Too long, didn't really land for me. Again, I did a review of that. It's just mediocre at best. Um, like, you know, I've heard bad things about Aquaman 2, and I had no interest in seeing it. Haven't seen Shazam 2. I don't know. I have to say Marvel's was the best of the ones that I did see. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. I think the marketing really was messed up for that. I think they just could have done a lot better job of explaining what it was and getting people excited about it, because there were a lot of good things about it. Um, it was fun, and I really like the characters in it. It still wasn't that great. Plot wise, it sort of fell flat. The super villain, they didn't really dive in enough into the backstory and stuff. Whatever. I've done a review of that as well, so I won't get into it again. But even though it was just sort of so-so, I think some of the performances and character stuff, particularly Ms. Marvel, elevated it certainly above the other ones that I saw. Because yeah, I don't know, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 didn't really do it for me, and Flash was awful. So yeah, and oh, I forgot I saw Ant-Man. I mean, I don't think Ant-Man was as bad as people thought either. I think for the most part it was decent. Um, Kang was the best part of it. It's unfortunate everything that happened with the actor, and Kang's my favorite supervillain. So I'm disappointed that they're apparently moving away from Kang. I wish they had just recast with a new actor, which should be super easy because you're dealing. The whole point is that there's millions of variants, so maybe some of the variants look different. It shouldn't be difficult. So I'm disappointed with that. But that was a movie again. It was okay. Well, it certainly wasn't as bad as people were sort of making out, but it also was a bit of a letdown. So the whole year was kind of a big wet noodle. So I have to say Marvels, but reluctantly, because I'd only give that a 6.5 or 7 out of 10 at best. There just wasn't anything that great last year. Metarog, thanks so much for the support, Roger. I really appreciate it. And Metarog says, did you ever find the missing calendars that fell behind your desk? That's question one. He's got a second question. Let's get to that. No, I know right where they are. They're behind this desk, which I'm looking at right here. And I think I could get to them, but I will have to. The desk is too heavy to move. And next to it, I have let's see, 28 boxes of comics stacked up. In order to make enough space for me to get in behind the desk, I'll have to move at least 8 of those boxes. And they're very heavy, and so I just haven't done it. But I should do it because I would like to get them out of there so they're not completely destroyed. I'll probably have to put them under something flat and heavy to flatten them back out for a long time to fix. I'm sure they're all bent and crunked. But also, I'd like to show them to you because the 1981 Marvel calendar in particular is excellent. It's excellent, and it's the hardest one to get. Maybe because everyone dropped them behind furniture. Maybe that's why there's so few of the 1981 calendars. But the answer is, I know right where they are, but I haven't retrieved either of them yet. Other question, do you have any comic related nerd shirts? I do. Of course, I have some from my own comic, the Crime Busters. Have a few different ones, but I also have tons of other ones. I've got a Flash shirt that I've had for 15 years and it's worn holes in it. I have a number of shirts that are just too small for me. The last 5 years or so, I've put on a fair amount of weight, and so I have like a whole like closet full of cool nerd shirts that I just can't wear. My convention shirts. When I was much slimmer, I have a shirt that I need to lose probably 50 pounds to fit in, but it's black and it's just got the Comics Code Authority stamp on it. But then the other one, that was my convention shirt for many years until I put on too much weight for it. And then I have a bigger shirt that was my next convention shirt for a number of years, and that one's actually now a little bit too small for me as well. And that I think you've seen on the channel before because I used to wear it right when I first was starting the channel. But it's a Count Dante shirt, and it's got the ad with Count Dante on it. So that was a show for many years that the shirt I'd wear to conventions was the Count Dante shirt. I've got something that I'm thinking about making, but I don't want to spoil it. There's something in the comics that I'm doing, my Crime Busters. There's something really fun from the Golden Age that I want to start. That I've started with a new issue, sort of sneaking in. It's going to eventually become a plot point, but it's more just for fun. And I'm going to make a T-shirt for it, and it'll be something I think a lot of people will find really fun. But I haven't done it yet, so I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, I've got tons of nerd shirts. I've got Captain America shirts, Avengers shirts, Superman shirts. I've got an Iron Fist shirt, which is too small to fit in now. And that was a shirt that I really loved until the TV show came out. And the show was so bad that I stopped wearing the shirt. In the late 90s, I had a Green Lantern shirt that I wore for many years. But then the shirt that I really loved that I got in the late 90s was a Reverse Flash shirt. So the yellow with the black and red logo. I wore that a ton in the late 90s and early aughts. I might still have that somewhere, but it's, that was when I was much slimmer than I am now. So, yeah, tons of nerd shirts. I just can't really wear most of them right now. But thanks for the question. Okay, Far Out Junk, thank you for this question as well. What's your absolute favorite D&D monster, and why isn't it the Beholder? I do like Beholders. Got nothing against Beholders. But in terms of classic D&D monsters, I mean, I guess I like Owlbears. I would say Owlbear is probably my favorite. I do like Displacer Beasts as well. Some of the, so just the classic D&D monsters. But of those, I would say Owlbear is probably my favorite. It's not that I don't like Beholders. There's just something like endearingly doofy about an Owlbear, where someone is like, what if, bear with me here, there's a bear, but it's got the head of an owl. It feels like someone was out drinking really late when they came up with Owlbear, but I love that. I think it's just goofy. So Owlbear is probably my favorite. Okay, Justin Bulka, thank you for the support. Justin asks, you've now completed a number of different comics. Is there one single issue you're most proud of? Well, thank you for the question. I always appreciate questions about making comics. As you can see, I have a not just a rack, but also now my new spinner rack. They're all comics that I've made. But actually, one of the first ones I did, and it's still the one that I'm probably most proud of, it's Crime Busters #2. It's a very personal story for me. and it's a story that kind of everything just came together. You know, when you're working on these stories, um, you have in mind like what you want the art to look like, what you want the story to do, um, how you want to tell it, why you want to tell it, what it's about. Like you have a lot of things, and you want it to be fun and all this stuff. And when you make them, um, sometimes they don't come out exactly the way you expected or wanted to. Like sometimes the art's not quite what you wanted. Particularly, when I was drawing them myself, I didn't. A lot of times, I didn't feel like I had the skill to do what I really wanted to. And when I'm working with other artists they're more skilled than I am, um, but they also have their own vision of things. So even when I write a description, even when I write a detailed description and do a thumbnail, sometimes they deliver stuff that is not what I had in my head, and then I have to sort of pivot and figure out how to make it work, and that's just part of the process. But it means that a lot of times when you end up with, even if it's good and even if you're proud of it, is not what you had in mind necessarily. It's not exactly right, or it's not exactly what you thought. But Crime Busters 2, everything came together. Um, so that's the issue where I was like, issue one of Crime Busters, there's some art in it that I don't really like, and I was sort of like, um, it was the first one I was doing, and it's fine, it's okay, it's fine. Um, but issue two is where I could really start giving the character sort of more personality as opposed to just introducing them. I don't know, just everything felt more natural in issue two than it did in issue one. I felt like I learned a lot from issue one, learned a lot about the art. I learned a lot about just the program I was using to make comics, how to have better word balloons. Like, learned a lot of stuff. So issue two, I felt like everything came together, and the story was what I wanted, and it just worked. So, and then later issues, some of them, um, I'm proud of all of them, but when I look through them, since it's my own work, a lot of times I'll be like, this panel wasn't quite the way I wanted. This panel doesn't quite work. Like I wanted it to build to X, and it's only sort of, like it doesn't quite come together the way I wanted. You're most critical of yourself. I haven't had anyone else read my stuff and say they were disappointed or didn't like it or anything. Everyone so far that has cared enough to give me feedback has liked it. But when I read them, I'm like, it's just not quite what I wanted it to be, and I try not to worry about those things actually too much. What I try and do is just say, okay, for next issue, I've got to remember that's something I can do a little better or whatever like that. But issue two, pretty happy with that one. That's the one that everything just worked for it for me. So that's probably my favorite. So thank you for asking. Okay, MRP, thank you for the question, MRP, and all the support. I really appreciate it. MRP says, I love the tabletop RPG variants for Quest, which are on my spinner rack back here. Any chance we could see a version of an issue of Crime Busters that features a Call of Cthulhu style adventure or some other open license horror TTRPG featuring one of the adventures Chuck and the gang participate in? As an interesting idea, and I'm not averse to that. I think I talked about this. I'm having massive deja vu this whole video. I swear I've answered all of these questions. So maybe I just answered them in my head when I was reading these earlier, because I tried to do this video 6 weeks ago and it has all these technical issues. So maybe I thought that I had answered them all, but I swear I've talked about this maybe on a live stream. The answer is maybe. I do have my friend that my dungeon master who does the Quest RPGs. He has run us through Call of Cthulhu adventures that he's done in the past. He's certainly more than capable of doing those. We've at one point we started developing a board game that would have been sort of like Betrayal on the House on the Hill, Betrayal at the House on the Hill, but with the Crime Busters as the playable characters, so Chuck and Trixie and Vera and different things. But it would it was sort of like partially that it's like a cross between Betrayal and something like Arkham Horror or something, right? But I just don't have time. I mean, that's basically the bottom line. Now, something like you're suggesting is actually a lot more feasible. So maybe I'll run up the flagpole, see what the other Crime Busters readers think, to see if it's worth his time even more so than mine, really, just to see if other people would be interested in it. But if there's enough interest, it's definitely something. I mean, I love different. I really enjoy the way different games allow for a different type of storytelling. So that could be a lot of fun. So thanks for the suggestion, and we'll see what people think. And then finally, Tartan Phantom, thanks so much for your support, as always. And Tartan Phantom says, who's your all-time favorite Charlton cover artist, regardless of genre? Which is a great question, and a tough one to answer, because Charlton's had a lot of great artists over the years. And I would say, I mean, it's really hard. They've had some really good, Aparo did covers for them. There's some great romance covers, actually, by Vince Coletta. Did some great stuff for them. The Art Capello, for me, does a lot of like really underrated great stuff. And Jose Luis Garcia Lopez did covers for them. And then there's all the like painted covers and the horror covers, people like Pat Boyette and others that I'm just forgetting. Just some great covers. Tom Sutton, great covers. Joe Staton. But I would probably say Demetrio. He only did like 5 romance covers. I think that's all he did for covers. I know he did a few other interiors for non-romance books. I think just the 5 romance covers, but they're all spectacular. I'd say one of them is just really good, and then the other 4 are all just like top-notch, spectacular covers. So Demetrio, to me, doesn't get enough credit, probably because he's only Charlton and only did a handful of covers, but he's probably my favorite. So that's it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, soon, keep your eye out. There's going to be another video announcing the 1,000 subscriber giveaway. I've got some really cool things there out of my personal collection I'm going to be giving away, including a couple signed books for really popular creators who are no longer with us, that I wanted to make available to people who have not been necessarily collecting for 40 years like I have, and maybe didn't have a chance to meet some of these people. So I'm going to be giving away some of those things from my collection. More on that soon. I'll have that video up soon. Thank you all for the support. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.